Okay, let's see if this works. I am in a bit of a pickle with the internet, so this might be very laggy, and I apologize for that. I'm just gonna double check that it is working, and then we'll start. YouTube's working, and Twitter's working. Okay, perfect. So, time to give you all a brief overview of what's going on across the world of tropics, mainly for the Western Pacific. But first off, what we're going to talk about, or just show, is the graphic around the world right now. We have like three systems that could be developing in the Eastern Pacific over the next week, mostly just staying out to sea. And two of them are going to be competing with each other for development. But our main system is this right here, Invest 92W in the Western Pacific, in between the Northern Mariana Islands and the island of Yap. This system, we've given a 20% chance of development within the next 48 hours if it wants to develop quickly, and a 70% chance within the next 7 days. Alright, so let's go over this system. And remember, if you have any questions about the system and what it's going to do, you can always ask, and I will be happy to answer. And oh my god, this is laggy. I am so sorry for that. So looking out the satellite imagery of it, the true color imagery, we can see a well-defined cluster of thunderstorms right over where its center is supposed to be. This is mainly due to what's called Dmax, or the diurnal maximum. You can see that the sun has just risen over it, so these thunderstorms are now bubbling up quite nicely as well. There's not a lot of shear where it's located at, so they're able to really just sustain over the center. Now, the big question is, will this sustain all the way through the night before the next round of thunderstorms spawn? We'll see. Here's a look at the infrared imagery of the storm right now. Nice thunderstorms still bubbling around over the center. Not as deep as of convection as it was earlier this morning, but it still is there nonetheless. Let me just make sure things are going well. Okay. Um, Yep, internet's of course doing horrible. 60% drop frames. Wow. Okay, this will be all fixed by tomorrow. Anyways, looking at the latest imagery from a scatterometer, it got a half pass on it, so it wasn't really exactly perfectly like well defined of where the winds are. So we can't really fully see just quite yet. We'll probably have a better update tomorrow on this. Now, looking at the wind shear it's in right now, this is roughly where the low is located at, and as you can see, there are lower wind shear values where the system's located at. That's really giving the system an opportunity to develop all these thunderstorms over the center and potentially tighten its vortex. And over the next 24-48 hours, it should be in a somewhat low shear environment. And now looking at its distances, because there's a lot of time we have to watch the system for potential development. It is around 1750 kilometers away from Manila and roughly 2200 kilometers away from Taiwan at this time. So again, we have lots of time to watch it for potential development. But also, it's just around 200 kilometers away from Yap. And yeah, I misspoke. It's in between Yap and Palau. Again, if you have any questions, you can ask them, and I will be doing my best to answer them towards the end. Oh, whoops, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, now let's take a look at the models. These are going to be the deterministic models, so they might not be as accurate this far out because we don't have a well-defined circulation just yet. But here's the GFS model. This has been the most bullish of the bunch, wanting it to quickly develop. Well, no, this one has it slowly developing over the next 5 days, then quickly rapidly intensifying, and it wants it to slam potentially into Taiwan. That is certainly a possibility, and it has it as a major typhoon at that stage. The European model, not as confident. Not as confident in its development, but it does want something to develop within the next 7 days, potentially by Taiwan and the Ryukyu Islands. So something to watch there as well. The Canadian model does want development, and it wants it pretty quick within the next 4 days potentially, and then becoming a potential typhoon by the time it nears the Ryukyu Islands and Taiwan. This is once again within 7 days. The German model, again, not as enthused on this one. It wants slow development over the next 5 days, and then potentially impacting Manila and the northern Philippines within the next 5 days as a weak tropical low, maybe tropical depression or storm. Now let's take a look at some of the ensembles. Here's a look at the European ensembles. This is where the system's located at, roughly by June 6th, that night. So it may be closer to the Philippines by that time. And as we go towards June 8th night, it may be around Manila and just the general northern Philippines, Luzon, that area just east. And then if we go towards the 9th morning, or 9th nights, this is where it becomes quite uncertain what the system could do. We have some ensembles off to the east just developing, then we have some in the South China Sea. So there's two possibilities with the European ensembles. And then as we go out further in time, the second cluster that was off to the east goes towards Taiwan and the Ryukyu Islands, whereas the other set of ensembles have it going towards the South China Sea, then likely on to China. So they do need to be watching out for this, just staying up to date. And here's a look at the overall ensembles. I know it's pretty cluttered, but pretty much the system's going to be moving generally northwest over the next day or so, and then it could split off into multiple possibilities. A lot of these areas it's too far out to say for sure, like for Japan, South Korea, and then also for China, it's a little bit too far out to say in Hong Kong if they could get impacts. But here's a look at the GFS ensembles. These wanted to rapidly develop into a powerful storm on the 9th night, before then mostly keeping it away from the Philippines, maybe clipping Luzon, but they want it generally headed towards Taiwan and the Ryukyu Islands, before potentially curving towards Korea. So again, this is another possibility, and here's a look at the ensembles on here. You can see most of them keep it clumped right around here in the beginning stages. Then it more so clumps together towards the Ryukyu Islands and eastern Taiwan, but some of them do keep it towards Luzon as well. So again, it's split up at that stage. Now looking at some of the shear, this shear it could face, here's the European model. It does want it to face a larger amount of shear over the next 2 days, but there is a gap here. I don't know if you can notice it right here, that if it's able to speed up a bit, it could enter that lower shear environment. But overall, it should be generally near a low shear environment over the next 7 days. So there's the possibility that it could quickly develop, at least on the European run. Now looking at the American run here, at its wind shear, okay, looking at the American model, its wind shear, the ensembles of it, sorry for the lag here. See if there's any questions. Nope. Okay, so this model wants it to be overall less wind shear here, and it wants an upper, sorry, I forget the phrase off the top of my head, but an upper level anticyclone, yeah, sorry, above this system as it meanders towards Taiwan, then that could help it really develop, especially near the Ryukyu Islands over here. It's in a the low is just solidly in a low shear environment, so we could see quick development if this verifies. Again, sorry for all the reconnections. This should not be happening. Anyways, let's talk a look or talk about impacts overall. This is the European run over the next 5 days. Generally, rainfall amounts of up to 200 millimeters are possible, but this isn't mainly from the system. But for Palau, that area could get upwards of 100 millimeters, but it does keep most of the rain away from the Philippines over the next 5 days. But looking at the American model, this is where we get a lot heavier rainfall totals, potentially upwards of 550 millimeters, maybe even 600 millimeters. Again, sorry for that. And then it does have some areas in the Philippines receiving over 200 millimeters, maybe 300 millimeters of rain over the next 5 days. That depends on how close it is to land and how many thunderstorms it spawns on the west side. And lastly, looking at the German model, it does have a clump of upwards of 300 millimeters just offshore, but of course, as it nears land, there could be even higher amounts. This cuts off right before it impacts land, so there could be amounts of 200 to 300 millimeters for parts of Luzon as it moves over the island, if this verifies. Now, looking at Pagasa's website here for its tropical cyclone threat potential, we can see that during week 1, this is through the 10th, they have a low chance of formation here, and it mostly keeps it away from the Philippines, but it does bring it towards Taiwan and the Ryukyu Islands. Then if we look at week 2, this is from the 11th through the 17th. Sorry about that. It does have it impacting the Ryukyu Islands and Taiwan, but again with a low chance. Then they also have another area over here in the South China Sea. This is what I was talking about, where it could split up into two areas. I mean, instead of it just being either one side or the other, there could be actually just two areas that develop. But at this stage, though, they'd be moving away from the Philippines. And then lastly, there was a question in the last video, so let's go back to questions now. The question that I saw in the last video was like, what website did I use for the thumbnail? A website that I recommend is called weathernerds.org. This website can really help you with satellite imagery of like what future satellite imagery could look like on the American model. So yeah, this is what I use here. And then you could just see this was the latest GFS run over the next week. Having it like struggling to develop a solid core up until it really hits or really nears Taiwan. But yeah, that's mostly it. Now, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat or the comments. If you leave them in the comments, I will do my best to answer them in the next video. Again, I am so sorry about all this internet connection thing. It's down until midnight my time. It is 10 p.m. for me. I'm going to see what this looks like on my channel, because there might have been questions, but I have not been able to see them. Okay, so wow, there are a lot of questions here. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone was here, but if you're in the chat, please let me know. I know how laggy it is. So one of our questions is, could this be the first Western Pacific storm? Yes, it can. It does seriously have that chance. And a solid chance. We are giving it a 70%